Jenna told me it was just a small corporate event, the kind she'd been attending for years. Nothing fancy, she said as she slipped her earrings in that morning. Just a cultural thing, local outreach. We've done a bunch of these before. She said it while sipping from the oversized mug I bought her last Christmas, the one that said "too bossy to be tired" in chipped gold print. Her tone was relaxed, casual, even cheerful, but something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't what she said, it was how deliberately neutral it sounded. Like she'd rehearsed being casual, practiced the right level of indifference. Still, I nodded and said, "Sounds good. Want me to help with tech again?" She hesitated just a second. One beat too long. Then she smiled. The familiar kind. The one she wore when she was stalling for time, and said, "If you're up for it. It's gonna be boring, honestly." Boring, right? We'd done this dance before. She worked in comms for a mid-sized company that liked pretending it was a startup. Every few months, they put on these internal culture events. Open mic nights, charity showcases, storytelling workshops. Her boss called it Brand and Asterisk Macy. I called it a night of tangled chords and tech rehearsals. But I never minded showing up. Not back then. There was something satisfying about slipping into the background, setting up lights and running cables while the real show happened on stage. I liked being useful, invisible, but essential. And I liked seeing her in her element. Confident, competent, in control. That used to make me proud. The venue this time was a performing arts center tucked between a yoga studio and a vegan taco spot. The kind of place that still had 90s stage rigging and smelled like dusty curtains and overripe fruit left backstage during a kid's play. I arrived about an hour before the others, as I always did. Jenna wasn't there yet, which gave me time to set up the booth, patch the mixer, run the mic checks, tape down the cords so no one tripped in their artisanal leather shoes. Outside the booth, I could hear the production team arrive. Footsteps, voices, the clatter of plastic cups being unwrapped. I recognized a few people by sound. Most were just names I'd heard Jenna mention over the years. None of them mattered much. Except one. Josh Randall. I didn't know much about him. I'd met him twice, once at a launch party, once at a barbecue. Both times, he'd shaken my hand a little too confidently and called me brother. Like we were in a fraternity neither of us remembered joining. Jenna once told me he was harmless, which is what people say about charming men when they don't want you looking too closely. The rehearsal started around 6. I was tucked away in the back booth, half hidden by an aging velvet curtain, scanning the EQ levels and testing the feed for the wireless mics. I had my headphones on, but only over one ear. I always left the other open to the room. You catch more that way. At first, it was just idle chatter. Some woman was reading her piece about hiking the Andes. Another guy, nervous and nasally, fumbled through a poem about grief and co-working spaces. I kept notes on their mic volumes. Jenna was off somewhere, probably prepping the next speaker. Then came the laughter. Not polite. Not corporate. Not haha. Good one, Ted from IT. This was warm. Giddy. Carefree in a way I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Caught me off guard, enough to make me pause the mix and look up. I leaned to the side, just past the curtain, and angled my view toward the stage. There she was, Jenna, standing beneath a pale wash of rehearsal lights, backlit in gold and blue like she was part of the show. She wore a fitted black blazer over a Berg *NDY top I didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back, not the usual messy bun, styled. Intentional, like she wanted someone to see her and remember the shape of her face. Josh stood next to her. Too close. He had one hand on the microphone stand and the other on her waist. Not a friendly hand. Not a colleague hand. A hand that lingered like it belonged there. And Jenna, she didn't flinch, didn't joke, didn't shift away. She just stood there, laughing like nothing in the world could touch her. Like she forgot anyone might be watching. And maybe she had. She tilted her head back, laughed again, and said something I couldn't hear over the low hum in the booth. Whatever it was, it made Josh grin wide, boyish, smug. Then she touched his arm. Lightly. Fingers trailing, deliberate. Int asterisk mate in a way only two people comfortable with crossing lines ever are. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. It wasn't the touch itself that hollowed my chest. It wasn't even the laughter, though that haunted me later. It was how natural they looked together. How practiced it felt. Like this had happened before, more than once, and now it was just another Thursday night inside an auditorium under lights I helped wire. In my hand, I still held the laminated cue sheet for the show. I tucked something inside it that afternoon. A folded note. Something Jenna wrote me years ago. One of those cheesy, earnest things we used to leave each other in lunch bags or on bathroom mirrors. Kept it. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of faith. I don't know why I brought it with me that night. Maybe I thought it would remind me who we were. Maybe I thought we'd laugh about it afterward. Wine glasses in hand. Feeling nostalgic. But instead, I stood frozen in the booth, fingers gripping that old note like it was a lifeline, while she leaned on another man like I'd never existed. 10 minutes passed before the lights changed. Someone called for 5 to start, and people began to scatter. Josh gave her one last look, something soft and knowing, then walked off toward the green room. Jenna lingered near the mic stand, adjusting something that didn't need adjusting. Then she looked up, saw me. Her expression didn't change. No panic, no guilt, no startled jolt like someone caught red-handed. Just a smile, a tilt of her head, and a wave, a casual wave, like we were at a PTA meeting or Sunday brunch. She mouthed something like, "Hey you," and gave a thumbs up toward the booth, as if to say, why so serious? It's just a show. But it wasn't a show anymore. Not for me. The script had already changed. I just hadn't been given my lines yet. I turned away slowly, back into the booth, heart pounding in that dull, hollow rhythm that doesn't come from fear, but from realization. I didn't know everything yet, but I knew enough. I knew that laugh wasn't mine anymore, and neither was she. After the event at the cultural center, I didn't say anything right away. We drove home in silence. Jenna talked about the venue, how the crowd was better than expected, how Josh really nailed the transitions. I didn't respond. I just nodded when I had to, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tight. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did and decided to pretend otherwise. That was her specialty lately. In truth, I'd been noticing things long before the moment I saw her laughing with him. Changes, shifts, the kind of details that only matter when you realize something isn't right and your brain starts playing back everything with a red pen. Started a few months ago. At first, it was subtle. Jenna had always worn the same warm vanilla scent, something comforting and a little old-fashioned. But one day, she came home smelling like something sharper, bolder. Spiced jasmine, maybe. I asked about it, and she said she picked up a new bottle from a coworker's recommendation. Just mixing it up. She shrugged. Fine. Normal, even. But then came the shoes. New heels. Not her usual flats or beat-up sneakers. These were statement heels, black, glossy, and loud on our hardwood floors. She said they were a gift to herself, that she'd been feeling off, and wanted to feel confident again. Fair enough. Then the morning coffees started showing up in twos. Jenna's never been a morning person. She barely touched breakfast, let alone made coffee. That was always my thing. But now, every morning, 2 mugs sat on the counter. When I asked, she said she was experimenting with different brews. One for her, one to try. But the lipstick marks were always on both cups. I told myself I was overthinking it, that she was just going through a phase. She even joined a yoga studio across town. Said it was about resetting mentally, but I noticed the receipts. Pricey, boutique-style sessions and always scheduled late in the evening. Her returns were quieter. Shower immediately, lock the bathroom door, and then always, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her phone became her second shadow. She started keeping it face down, then switched to silent mode. Eventually, it was passcode locked, something we never did before. She brushed it off. Everyone at work's been paranoid about security lately. Her laptop, once permanently open on the kitchen island, started disappearing into drawers. When I asked where it went, she just said she didn't want to leave it out while cooking. One night, while she was in the shower, I heard her phone buzz. I glanced over. Preview lit up. Just a name, J. And underneath, a message that simply read, "Still thinking about earlier." I felt something in my chest give way. Not break, just give. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I started collecting small things. I told myself I was just being cautious, just in case. A photo of the lipstick-stained coffee cups. A screenshot *T of her yoga schedule. A receipt left in the trash from a bar across town on a night she said she stayed late at work. GPS data from a car app we both had access to. I started saving it all. Quietly, carefully. Not because I didn't trust her, but because she was giving me every reason not to. And she hated being questioned. If I so much as asked what she did that day, her answers got vague fast. Just the usual. Or, you know how work is. And if I pushed even a little, she'd sigh, call me insecure, and ask when I became so suspicious. The first time I brought up Josh's name, she looked up like I'd pulled a knife. "What about him?" she asked, guarded. "Nothing. Just seems like you two are working together a lot lately." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "He's on my team. He's literally assigned to the same projects." "What, are you jealous now?" That word, jealous, got thrown around a lot in the weeks that followed. It was her way of making me feel like the problem. If I asked why she came home so late, jealous. If I noticed her texting in the middle of the night, jealous. She even joked once that I should relax before I turned into one of those husbands who checks browser histories. She laughed. I didn't. Eventually, I bought a small external drive. I kept it in my car under the lining of the trunk, where she'd never look. That's where I stored everything I couldn't explain away anymore. *TS of bank transactions. Uber rides. A hotel confirmation under her name but billed to his corporate card. I labeled it House Docs. But inside, it was a slow, quiet undoing of every excuse she'd given me. Some nights, I'd lie awake beside her, listening to her breathe, and wonder how long it had been since she chose him. Not just physically, emotionally. How long had she started turning to him with things she used to bring to me? The little victories at work. The inside jokes. The quiet complaints. When did that shift happen? I couldn't pinpoint the moment. And maybe that made it worse. It was like watching mold grow in the corner of a room you thought was clean. You don't notice until it's everywhere. One day, while doing laundry, I found a receipt folded into the pocket of one of her jeans. A boutique hotel downtown. 2 nights ago. It wasn't even hidden. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she stopped caring whether I saw. On the back was a note, scribbled in handwriting I didn't recognize. "You smell like freedom." I stared at it for a long time. The kind of long that makes clocks feel broken. That night I didn't speak to her. I didn't ask. I didn't confront. I made dinner. She said she wasn't hungry. She went upstairs. I cleaned up, took the trash out, and when I came back inside, I added the receipt to the folder. By then, it wasn't about proving something. It was about preparing. Preparing for the version of me I knew I'd have to become. Because love is blind, sure. But survival sees everything. And it remembers. It was a Tuesday night. Gray, cold, forgettable. Jenna was out at a seminar downtown. Something about branding strategy and personal growth. Her texts were breezy, punctuated with exclamation marks that felt forced. She added a heart emoji at the end of one, something she hadn't done in months. It almost made me laugh. I wasn't looking for anything that evening. I hadn't planned to snoop. But the jacket hanging on the back of the chair, the same navy blue one she always wore when she dressed up for these events, had a corner of a paper sticking out from the inside pocket. Caught my eye while I was passing through the dining room. I pulled it out without hesitation. At this point, it didn't even feel like invading privacy. It felt like confirming what I already knew. It was a hotel receipt. Midtown, room 808, dated the night before. Not tonight, the night before. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. It was his, Josh Randall, billed to his corporate card. And on the back, in her handwriting, that same curling script I once found endearing, were the words, "You smell like freedom." I sat down at the dining table and stared at it. There it was. Not a metaphor. Not a suspicion. A receipt. A room number. A name. Her handwriting. And still, even with everything I'd collected, that paper in my hand felt like a punch to the gut. It made it real. It made it permanent. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't flip a table like you see in movies. I just sat there, holding that slip of paper, while the clock ticked steadily on the wall behind me. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I felt like I was sinking into that silence, inch by inch. There's something surreal about moments like that. You expect rage, maybe devastation, but I just felt blank, like the part of me that used to react to pain had gone offline. I went upstairs and looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same lines, same tired eyes, but I didn't recognize the man looking back at me. He looked like someone who had stayed too long, like someone who'd tried too hard for too little. A man who kept believing that one more conversation, one more apology, one more chance would fix what was already gone. I stood there for a long time, gripping the edge of the sink, waiting to feel something sharp enough to move me. But the truth is, my heart had already gone quiet. That was the scariest part. The pain wasn't new, it was just finally undeniable. I walked back downstairs, sat at the table, and opened the folder. Everything was in there. *TS. Logs, maps, notes, little pieces of truth that I had collected in silence. But the receipt felt different. It was like the last nail in a coffin I didn't want to admit I'd been building. I held it between my fingers, reading those 5 words again. You smell like freedom. Freedom. From what? From me? From our life? From a decade of loyalty and trying? I remembered the day we moved into this house. Jenna picked out the curtains. I hung the pictures. We sat on the floor eating takeout and planning our future. We used to laugh about how ugly the light fixtures were. We said we'd replace them when we had the money. We never did. I never imagined she'd replace me first. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed downstairs thinking, not about how to confront her. I already knew that part was pointless. I thought about how to end it properly, cleanly, without begging for answers I'd never trust. I started printing documents, updated the file, made copies of the receipts, the messages, the appointment logs. I backed everything up on a secure drive. I called my lawyer the next morning and said, "I'm ready." She didn't ask questions, just said, "Come in today." When Jenna came home that night, she was humming. She walked into the kitchen, kicked off her shoes and said, "You won't believe how long the Q&A went." Then she kissed the top of my head and poured herself a glass of wine. I didn't say a word. She didn't notice. I watched her from across the room as she scrolled her phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. Maybe it was a meme. Maybe it was him. It didn't matter. All I saw was a stranger, and I realized she was already gone. Her body was in the house, but her heart had checked out months ago. And now, with every smile meant for someone else, she left me a little more hollow. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the morning at the bank. We had joint accounts, but I'd already created a private one in my name. Slowly, discreetly, I moved a portion of the funds, just what I had contributed. Nothing more. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in control. I met with a notary that afternoon and signed the last of the paperwork for the title adjustment. The house had been mine before the marriage. A technicality, but one that mattered now. Piece by piece, I was building the exit she didn't even see coming. She thought I was numb. She didn't know I was already gone too, just in a different direction. That night, we ate dinner in front of the TV. She talked about work. I nodded. She laughed at a commercial. I smiled. It was strange, playing the part of the husband she believed still existed. But it gave me time. It gave me space. Later, while she was in the shower again, her sacred place these days, I opened her laptop. I didn't expect it to still be unlocked. But it was. Maybe she thought I'd stopped checking. Maybe she just got careless. Either way, there it was. An unsent message to Josh. "I miss yesterday already. You make me feel like I'm 20 again." No greeting. No sign-off. Just those words. floating on the screen, unfinished. I closed the lid. I didn't need more. She wasn't torn. She wasn't lost. She wasn't confused. She was choosing this. Actively. Repeatedly. And I was done pretending I was powerless in the story she was writing. I didn't sleep that night either. But I felt awake in a way I hadn't in months. I woke up before Jenna the next morning. The sun hadn't even cracked the edge of the blinds, but I was already up, dressed, and downstairs making coffee. She used to say mornings were her favorite time with me. Quiet, no pressure, no distractions. But lately, she slept through them. This morning, I didn't bring her a mug. I made one cup, just mine. There was no anger left, no yelling in my head, no imaginary confrontations, just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in months. Clarity. She'd made her choices. Now I would make mine. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing everything out. Not emotions. Not questions. Just steps. Bullet points. Actions. A blueprint. Finalized paperwork with attorney. Secure backup of financial records. Reassign title of car. Update emergency contacts. Remove her from insurance. It was methodical. Clean. Like packing a suitcase for a one-way trip. She still didn't know what I knew. Or maybe she didn't care. Either way, it gave me time. She was too busy hiding her lies to notice I'd stopped looking at her the same. By noon, I'd contacted the attorney again. We scheduled an in-person signing for the revised prenup, revised under the guise of tax restructuring. Using a signature I already had from the previous year's paperwork. The lawyer said it was legally binding, enforceable. She wouldn't see it coming, because she didn't see me anymore. I was no longer the man who'd stay up worrying about her when she was working late. I was no longer the man who would assume the best. That man had died quietly the moment she touched someone else's hand and called it freedom. Now I was someone else. Someone sharper. The bank meeting came next. I'd been slowly shifting our joint funds, just the portions I'd contributed, into a separate account with my name only. It wasn't about cutting her off. It was about building a foundation she couldn't reach. I wasn't hiding. I was protecting. And then there was the trust. The house had been mine before the wedding. At the time, it didn't seem important whose name was on the paperwork. We were building a life together. But now I knew that signatures mattered. Documents mattered. They were the quiet architecture of truth. And the truth was, she didn't deserve to keep living in a place built on my sacrifices. So I transferred the deed into a trust, irrevocable, lawyer-sealed. Her name wasn't on it. Her name wouldn't be on anything moving forward. She was busy posting wine selfies. I was restructuring ownership. She was laughing at inside jokes with Josh. I was calling notaries and running asset reports. Her betrayal made her careless. My grief made me precise. Each day, I played my role like nothing had changed. I'd ask about her day. She'd lie. I'd pretend to believe her. She'd kiss my cheek. I'd smile and nod. Meanwhile, the walls were shifting around her, brick by quiet brick. I emailed her cousin, her mother, even her father, who I'd been financially supporting through his rehab program. I didn't explain or accuse. I just attached copies of payments I'd made on their behalf. Dates. Amounts. Silent footnotes of the role I had played behind the curtain. Then I stopped the payments. No words. No warnings. If she noticed the fallout, she didn't say anything. But I saw her checking her phone more. Calling her mom, who suddenly wasn't answering. Her cousin ghosted her completely. Her father's facility left a message about missed invoices. I watched it unfold like rainfall. Quiet, steady, inevitable. That night, she came home from yoga and found me organizing papers at the dining table. "What's all this?" she asked, eyes scanning the spread of folders and files. "Just updating some things for tax season," I said without looking up. She nodded slowly, unsure, then wandered to the kitchen. I heard her open the fridge, close it again, then silence. No questions, no confrontation. She was slipping and she knew it, but she didn't know how far she'd already fallen. She still thought I was the same man who would fall apart without her, that I'd crumble, beg, plead, that I needed her. But what I needed now was distance, simplicity, control. She went to bed early that night. I stayed downstairs, staring at the list I'd made and checking off another box. There was one item left: peace. It doesn't come loudly. It doesn't come in grand speeches or final acts. It comes when you've done the work, when you've stopped asking why, when you accept that some things break quietly, long before the shatter is heard. She once told me I was too calm during storms. That was because I never feared the wind. I feared what came after, the rebuilding. But this time I was ready for it, and she wouldn't be a part of it. The first crack appeared in her voice. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. I knew her rhythms, the way her tone shifted when she was nervous, the half-second pause when she was trying to calculate a response instead of just giving it. That morning, she asked if I had seen the mail, and when I said yes, her eyes flicked to the table like she was scanning for something missing. She wasn't looking for a bill. She was looking for a warning. A day later, another crack formed. She came home holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. Her cousin hadn't responded to 3 texts. Weird, she muttered. We were supposed to meet for lunch. I shrugged. Maybe something came up. Maybe, she echoed. But her voice didn't sound convinced. The next morning, her father called twice before 9 a.m. She didn't answer, just stared at the screen like it was a fire she couldn't put out. When I asked if everything was okay, she said, "He's just being dramatic." I didn't reply. She paced more that week. Her smiles didn't last. Her wine stayed half full. She stopped taking photos of dinner. Her phone buzzed less. And when it did, she didn't light up like before. I knew what was happening. The scaffolding she had built, of people, of favors, of backup plans, was crumbling. And I didn't have to do anything but let it fall. On Thursday, a letter came in a plain envelope. No logo, just her name, typed cleanly, addressed to our home. She opened it in the kitchen while I rinsed a coffee mug. I watched her eyes scan the page. I didn't ask what it was. She didn't offer. But her hand trembled slightly, and she folded it too carefully, like she was trying to put something broken back together. That night, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than usual. She stared at herself, not fixing makeup or checking for flaws, just staring, as if trying to find something familiar in the reflection. I watched from the hallway, unnoticed. She looked like someone realizing they were being seen for the first time, and not liking what was visible. The silence between us grew heavier, not louder. She talked less, asked fewer questions. Her nervous energy began to look more like quiet panic. Saturday afternoon, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, not texting, just staring at the lock screen. She looked up when I entered the room, startled, like I'd caught her in something even though she wasn't doing anything. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just tired." That was the 3rd time that week she'd used that excuse. I didn't push. I just walked past her to the closet and grabbed my coat. "Going to run a few errands," I said. "Want me to come?" she asked, standing abruptly. "No, that's okay," I replied without turning around. "I won't be long." I could feel her watching me as I left, like she suddenly wasn't sure where I was going, or if I was telling the truth. That irony wasn't lost on me. I spent the next hour driving without destination. I wasn't avoiding her. I was giving her room to unravel, and she was, piece by piece. By the following week, I noticed she'd stopped talking about Josh. His name, once casually dropped into every work story, vanished. No more mentions of brainstorming sessions or how he really gets creative flow. Nothing. I knew why. She was being ghosted. I had predicted it. Not because I knew Josh personally, but because I'd seen his type before. Men who like the thrill, not the consequence. Men who whisper freedom in someone else's ear but vanish the second reality shows up with its clipboard and questions. Whatever they had, whatever she thought they had, was now fading. And it was written all over her face. She checked her phone constantly, opened and closed messages without typing. One morning, I walked into the room just as she was deleting a photo of the two of them. She looked at me, eyes wide, and then looked away before I could say anything. I didn't need to. She was already unraveling herself. The cracks were no longer small. They were chasms. I started hearing her cry in the shower again. Just faint sniffles at first, then full sobs she thought I couldn't hear through the water. I never knocked, never asked, never said, "Are you okay?" She knew I knew, and the weight of that silence was heavier than any fight we could have had. One evening, while I was going through a drawer for some old tax documents, I came across one of the notebooks she used to write in. She kept journals. Nothing dramatic, just thoughts, quotes, lists of goals. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what those pages used to hold. Dreams, ideas, plans for us. And now, probably just echoes. Later that week, she tried to initiate contact. Little things. She offered to cook dinner. She asked if I wanted to go for a walk. She sat next to me on the couch instead of the armchair. Each gesture was small, harmless on the surface, but I knew they weren't signs of affection. They were signs of fear. She wasn't reaching for connection. She was reaching for control, trying to reclaim something she felt slipping away, something she never expected to lose because she believed I'd never walk. She believed I'd always be the one waiting. And maybe once I would have been, but not anymore. She tried again the next morning, slipped a note into my laptop bag. It read, "I miss us. Can we talk?" I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with the others. The hotel receipt, the messages, the unsigned cards from weeks prior when she tried to pretend things were normal. And I left it there. I didn't need to respond, because I knew she was already having the conversation in her own head. That night, she called her mother again. This time, her voice cracked. "I just don't know what's happening. He's so quiet. He's different." I was sitting on the porch. I heard every word through the open window. Her mother didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe you should have thought about that before you broke what you had." I heard the pause in Jenna's breath, like she hadn't expected the guilt to echo from someone else's mouth. She ended the call early. The next morning, there was a letter on the counter, unopened, from the city office. Her design studio, technically, her name had been on some of the papers, but the building, the business license, the lease, all under my name. The letter confirmed the removal of her name from the secondary ownership clause. She didn't ask me about it, but I saw her standing by the counter later, reading it again, holding the page like it might rewrite itself if she stared long enough. That night, she didn't eat dinner, didn't talk, didn't even go to bed. She sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, the TV playing some show she wasn't watching. I passed her once to refill my water. Our eyes met. For the first time in weeks, she didn't look away. She just asked, quietly, "Are you leaving me?" I didn't answer, because some questions only exist to fill space between moments that are already gone. I went upstairs. She didn't follow, and that was the biggest crack of all. She started coming home early, not with wine or excuses, but with silence. She began cooking again, setting plates for two, leaving coffee near my keys in the morning, asking about my day. But this wasn't love. It was panic. I didn't answer her questions. I didn't touch the food. Her smile became a question mark, and I gave no answer. She sat across from me on the couch like a stranger waiting for a familiar face. "Can we talk?" she whispered one night. I looked at her like someone I'd already said goodbye to. Her perfume didn't pull me in. Her voice didn't soften me. She had nothing left I wanted. She reached for my hand. I moved it. No words, just distance, the kind she could feel. She tried to stitch together what she tore apart, but I had no interest in being sewn back into the fabric of her regret. She wasn't losing me. She had already lost me. I had just stopped announcing it. She found it one morning, tucked inside a book she once gave me, a white envelope, inside a letter and a check. The amount, half her contribution to our shared account, down to the cent. The note read, "You wanted freedom. Now you have it. This isn't revenge. It's the ending you chose when you stopped seeing me. The money isn't compensation. It's a symbol. You're free now. No posts, no drama, no goodbye, just free. She sat on the edge of the bed, motionless, not crying, not yelling, just quiet, because she finally understood. The door hadn't slammed. It had closed softly, without force. She lost everything not because I pushed her out, but because I let go. Freedom had a cost, and she paid it in full the moment she mistook my silence for weakness. I wasn't punishing her. I was releasing us both.